April 20th, 2022, Huntsville, Texas. A phone rings. No courtroom. No crowd. No dramatic last-minute courthouse sprint. Just a single phone call. And 48 hours standing between a 56-year-old mother and a lethal injection needle. The call delivers a stay of execution. Melissa Lucio will not die on April 22nd. Not today. But here is what makes this story different from every other death row case you have ever heard. A 2-year-old girl is dead. Her mother is convicted in less than 24 hours of interrogation. And the evidence that could have changed everything, evidence that prosecutors had in their possession the entire time, never reached the jury. Not one piece of it. 17 years later, the same judge who sentenced Melissa Lucio to death signed a document declaring her actually innocent. The state of Texas has still not opened the prison doors. What was hidden inside those case files is something the jury was never allowed to see, and what happens next is almost impossible to believe. This is the story of Melissa Lucio. Welcome back to If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now. We cover the cases that demand a second look. Let's get into it. Before we talk about courtrooms, confessions, or death row, we need to talk about Mariah. Mariah Alvarez was born in 2004 in Harlingen, Texas. She was the youngest of 14 children, a toddler growing up in a large, low-income household in South Texas, surrounded by siblings, noise, and movement every single day. Family described her as active and bright, a little girl full of life, in a home full of people who loved her. The house was crowded, money was tight, but it was home. Then came February 17, 2007. Mariah is found unresponsive inside the family home. By the time paramedics arrive, she is not breathing. Emergency responders do everything they can. It is not enough. Mariah Alvarez dies that day. She is 2 years old. She never gets the chance to grow up, never gets the chance to become anything beyond a name in a court file and a photograph her family carries everywhere. That loss is real. That pain belongs to everyone who loved her, and it is where this entire story begins. Melissa Lucio was born in 1969 in South Texas, not far from the U.S.-Mexico border. She grew up poor, one of many children in a household that struggled to stay afloat. Stability was something she rarely knew as a child. Court records and defense documentation describe her early life as marked by instability, abuse, and neglect. That detail matters. It is not background noise. It becomes one of the most important facts in this entire case. By the time Mariah was born, Melissa was a mother of 14 children. Those who knew her described her as devoted, warm, and deeply religious. Her son John Lucio has said publicly, more than once, that he has never believed, not for a single moment, that his mother harmed his baby sister. But the prosecution told a different story. They pointed to prior Child Protective Services involvement. They highlighted the size and condition of the home. They took the chaos of raising 14 children in poverty and presented it to a jury as evidence of a dangerous woman. What they never told that jury was this. Melissa Lucio was a documented survivor of repeated domestic and sexual abuse at the hands of male authority figures throughout her life. That detail was in the file. It never left the file. The prosecution painted her as a monster, but the file they kept locked away told a completely different story, and it would take nearly 2 decades for anyone to read it. In early 2007, Melissa Lucio was doing what she had always done, holding a large family together with very little. 14 children, 1 household, Harlingen, Texas. The financial pressure was constant. The emotional weight was heavy. Every single day was a stretch. Then something happened that would change everything. Court records later revealed that Mariah fell down a flight of stairs. At least one of Melissa's other children witnessed the fall directly. In the days that followed, Mariah's condition declined. She was not her usual self. The family could see it. Medical attention should have been sought immediately. A hospital visit. A phone call to authorities. But it never came. Here is the part that requires context. Melissa Lucio had a history with Child Protective Services. Her family had been watched, scrutinized, and investigated before. For a mother already living under that kind of pressure, calling authorities may have felt like a risk she could not afford to take. Defense experts and later judicial findings argue that this was a family in poverty being monitored, not a home run by a violent mother. The days after the fall passed quietly. No 911 call, no hospital record, no documented visit to a doctor. Then February 17, 2007 arrives, and within hours, Melissa Lucio's life changes forever. Now here is where the story takes a turn that is hard to believe. The man responsible for building the case against Melissa Lucio was Cameron County District Attorney Armando Villalobos. He prosecuted her in 2008. He stood before a jury and argued that this mother was a killer. But court records later confirmed that Villalobos withheld critical evidence from the defense. What did he bury? Recorded interviews with Melissa's own children. Statements from multiple kids who confirmed that Mariah had fallen down the stairs. Accounts describing how her condition worsened in the days that followed. Evidence that directly contradicted every single thing the prosecution told that jury. It sat in a file, untouched, unseen. Then there was the Texas Ranger who took the witness stand and told the jury he could determine Melissa Lucio's guilt simply by watching her body language during interrogation. The judge allowed that testimony without question. But when the defense tried to bring in expert witnesses to explain why an abuse survivor might behave differently under pressure from male authority figures, that testimony was blocked. The jury never heard it. Now here is the part that stops most people cold. In 2014, Armando Villalobos was sentenced to 13 years in federal prison, not for anything connected to Melissa Lucio's case, but for soliciting and accepting over $100,000 in bribes in exchange for prosecutorial favors. The man who put her on death row was a convicted criminal. The evidence he never handed over was sitting in a file the whole time. We are just getting to the part that will genuinely shock you. If you have not subscribed yet, do it now and keep watching. February 17, 2007. This is the day everything collapses. According to court records and defense findings, Mariah had not been well. Days had passed since the staircase fall. Her condition had been declining. Inside the Lucio home, life moved the way it always did. A mother managing 14 children, keeping the household running, doing what she could with what she had. But Mariah was getting worse. At some point that day, Melissa finds her youngest daughter unresponsive. She is not moving. She is not breathing. Melissa calls for help. Paramedics are dispatched to the home in Harlingen. When emergency responders arrive, the scene is chaotic. A grieving mother, multiple children in the home, a 2-year-old girl who cannot be revived. Despite every effort, Mariah does not survive. She is pronounced dead. At that stage, the cause of death has not been formally determined. Then the police arrive. Within a short time, law enforcement begins treating the home as a potential crime scene. No independent investigation into the staircase fall is commissioned. No effort is made to immediately verify the account that Mariah had been injured days earlier. That same night, Melissa Lucio is taken in for questioning. She has not slept. She has just watched her 2-year-old daughter die. She is brought into a room with male investigators, and the questioning begins. It goes on for hours. Court records document the length and nature of that interrogation. Filmmaker Sabrina Van Tassel later obtained footage showing investigators prompting a visibly distressed Melissa into spanking a doll during questioning, a moment that would become one of the most debated scenes in the entire case. After hours of pressure, Melissa makes statements that investigators interpret as an admission of guilt. She would later maintain that she felt responsible for not getting Mariah medical help sooner, not that she had caused her daughter's death. Those are two very different things. What she said in that room, exhausted, grieving, surrounded by investigators, would be used to put her on death row. But what she meant? That is a different question entirely. Following the interrogation, Melissa Lucio is arrested and charged with capital murder. The case moves fast. Prosecutors place the interrogation recording at the center of everything. That tape, obtained from a grieving, sleep-deprived mother during hours of overnight questioning, becomes their most powerful exhibit. News travels quickly in Harlingen. John Lucio is 17 years old when he learns that his mother has been arrested for the death of his baby sister. He does not believe it, not for 1 second. According to his own public statements, he rejected that idea the moment he first heard it, and that position has never changed. Years later, documentary filmmaker Sabrina Van Tassel gains access to the interrogation footage and builds an entire film around it, titled The State of Texas versus Melissa. When the video is made public, viewers do not see a killer being exposed. They see an exhausted woman being walked through hours of leading questions, physically prompted by investigators, and worn completely down before she says anything they can use. The reaction is significant. But back in 2007, none of that scrutiny exists yet. Law enforcement does not independently investigate the claim that Mariah fell downstairs before her death. That account is never formally verified. It is never presented to a jury. In Harlingen, the public story is already forming. A mother of 14 is accused of killing her youngest child. And that version of events, incomplete as it is the only one most people will hear for years. At trial, the prosecution builds its case on physical evidence of injury. Their argument is straightforward. Mariah's wounds are consistent with deliberate abuse. Defense experts who could have challenged that interpretation are not given equal standing before the jury. Then comes the Texas Ranger. He takes the witness stand in a capital murder trial and tells the jury that he can determine Melissa Lucio's guilt simply by observing how she behaved during interrogation. Her expressions, her reactions, her body language. The judge allows every word of it. When the defense attempts to bring in expert witnesses to explain how a documented abuse survivor responds under prolonged pressure from male authority figures, that testimony is shut down. The jury never hears it. Meanwhile, Armando Villalobos holds recorded interviews with Melissa's children. Children who witnessed Mariah's fall. Children who watched her health decline in the days that followed. Their accounts directly contradict the prosecution's entire narrative. Not one of those interviews reaches the jury. According to later reporting, both Harlingen police records and Child Protective Services documentation supported the conclusion that favorable evidence had been deliberately suppressed. This is not a defense theory. It is on the record. So what does the jury actually see? A taped interrogation. A grieving mother behaving in ways they cannot explain. A Texas Ranger telling them what that behavior means. No staircase witnesses. No recorded fall, no counter-evidence of any kind. The case looks airtight, because half the evidence is missing. Years pass, the appeals keep coming, and they keep getting denied. In 2021, Melissa Lucio files a habeas corpus claim with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. It is denied. After more than a decade of fighting through every available legal channel, she is running out of road. Then the state of Texas sets a date. April 22, 2022. Lethal injection. Huntsville, Texas. A real date. A real needle. Melissa Lucio is told she is going to die. 48 hours before that appointment, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals issues a stay of execution. The court orders an evidentiary hearing to examine claims that favorable evidence had been withheld at trial. What makes this moment extraordinary is who corroborates those claims. Sitting Cameron County District Attorney Luis V. Sands. The same office that once prosecuted Melissa Lucio now confirms that evidence was suppressed. The withheld recordings from her children are finally examined. Multiple children describe Mariah's fall down the stairs. At least one witnessed it directly. Others describe watching her condition worsen in the days that followed. This is the evidence that never reached the jury. Vanessa Potkin and the Innocence Project take on the case. The argument is no longer just about prosecutorial error. It is about whether any crime was committed at all. Filmmaker Sabrina Van Tassel's documentary begins circulating internationally. More than half of the Texas House of Representatives sign a letter questioning the conviction. The pressure builds from every direction. The truth is finally moving. 2008, Cameron County, Texas. Melissa Lucio stands trial for the capital murder of her daughter, Mariah Alvarez. The prosecution presents the interrogation tape. They present injury evidence interpreted as deliberate abuse. They put the Texas Ranger on the stand to tell the jury what Melissa's body language means. The defense attempts to bring in expert testimony about trauma responses and false confessions in abuse survivors. The judge blocks it. The jury deliberates and returns their verdict. Guilty of capital murder. Melissa Lucio is sentenced to death. From 2008 to 2022, appeal after appeal is filed, at the state level, at the federal level. Every single one is denied. The Fifth Circuit denial in 2021 effectively closes the last major federal door available to her. Then comes the stay of execution in 2022. And with it, an evidentiary hearing presided over by State District Judge Arturo Nelson, the same judge who originally sentenced Melissa Lucio to death. In April 2024, Judge Nelson files his findings with the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. His recommendation: overturn the conviction. Evidence was suppressed. Flawed science was used. False testimony was presented to the jury. 6 months later, in October 2024, Judge Nelson goes further. He files a second document declaring Melissa Lucio actually innocent of killing Mariah Alvarez, not wrongly convicted on a technicality, actually innocent. The man who prosecuted her, Armando Villalobos, had already served federal prison time for bribery by then. The conviction he delivered has now been declared invalid by the very judge who handed it down. The case sits with the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. No deadline, no ruling, no answer. Melissa Lucio has spent 17 years on death row. She is 56 years old. Every day inside that facility is a waiting game, but according to her son John Lucio, his mother refuses to stop living while she waits. She calls her family as often as the system allows. She dials fast, trying to reach her daughter-in-law Michelle before the time runs out. John describes those calls as spirited and full of joy. Even now, even after everything. Every Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals posts its orders and opinions online. Every single week, Melissa's legal team, her family, and her supporters pull up that page and search for her name. They have been doing this for 2 years. No ruling has come. In a written statement released through her lawyer, Melissa said, "I am grateful to God who continues to give me the strength to keep my hopes up and has kept me going through this unimaginable ordeal." On April 20th, 2022, the court stepped in. The execution scheduled for 2 days later was stopped. The needle was never administered, but the cell door never opened either. John Lucio put it plainly: she should never have been convicted. She should never have faced execution. And I cannot believe it is 4 years later and we are all still waiting. If the court rules in her favor, Melissa Lucio will become the first woman in Texas death row history to be exonerated. A little girl fell down a flight of stairs in Harlingen, Texas. She was 2 years old. Her mother held her, cared for her, and watched her take her last breath. That grief, raw, real, and undeniable, was then used by the state of Texas to put that same mother on death row. Think about that. The prosecutor who buried the evidence that could have freed her was later sent to federal prison for corruption. The judge who looked Melissa Lucio in the eye and sentenced her to death later signed a document declaring her actually innocent. And the system that condemned her is now the only thing standing between her and the front door. Before her scheduled execution in 2022, attorney and pen pal Sandra Jonas asked Melissa how she would face either outcome, freedom or death. Melissa answered, "I am getting freedom either way. I am either getting freedom to go home to my family or freedom to go home to heaven." That is either the most heartbreaking sentence ever spoken from death row, or the most courageous. Maybe both. Drop a comment below. What moment in this case hit you the hardest? Was it the buried evidence? The interrogation tape? The judge who changed his own ruling? Let me know. And if this case deserves more eyes, share this video. Subscribe if you have not already. Justice starts with people paying attention. I will see you in the next one.